Way back in 2016, Trump declared to the world his plan to build a wall, a big, beautiful wall. As you might remember, this plan was heavily mocked and ridiculed by almost everyone with a working brain. Fast forward to this week, Trump is desperately squeezing divided Republicans to pass through his big, beautiful bill. Trump has even threatened certain Republicans not to vote against this bill or else risk being kicked out of the party. After 48 hours of furious negotiations with divided Republicans, Trump's bill passed the House by one singular vote. Now the fate of this bill will be decided by the Senate. Instead of bricks and concrete, this bill relates to trillions of dollars of tax cuts and spending cuts, which will hurt millions of working Americans while benefiting the rich. Some will see a bigger paycheck for now, but in the long term, this bill will cause the government budget to spiral out of control and lead to a federal debt default, or as I like to call it, Economic Judgment Day. Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill is ringing alarm bells, especially for lower-income U.S. citizens and international investors. This bill would make Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent while also eliminating taxes on overtime and tips. Now, you may be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Surely tax cuts are a good thing. More money in people's pockets, which means more spending and more money for businesses. Higher profits will lead to more investment, creating more jobs and making the economy better. Right? Normally, you would be correct. But as it stands, U.S. federal debt is at every single one of us hates tax, but tax helps our society function. Tax is what the government uses to fund defense, education, and most importantly, swimming pools for politicians.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Yes.
But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it.
Social services like healthcare and education are barely surviving with the current level of funding. So just imagine what lower taxes would mean. Well, if you are an American citizen, you may not have to imagine for long. Many are worried about the sustainability of such a large debt. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget estimates Trump's bill would increase the debt by at least $3.3 trillion through to the end of 2034. It would also increase the debt-to-GDP ratio from around 100% today to a record 125%. To understand how the situation got so bad in the first place, you must understand how the government funds its spending. To raise the money it needs, the government sells bonds to different investors, promising to pay them back within a few years. In return, these investors receive a fixed rate of interest known as a coupon, usually twice a year. Historically, U.S. government bonds have always been considered the safest investment known to man, with essentially zero risk. This is what allowed the USA to borrow so much money, since investors always believed they would receive their money back and a little interest on top, thus maintaining strong demand. Just to throw an example, the Bank of England holds $770 billion worth of U.S. government bonds, while the Bank of Japan holds almost $1.1 trillion worth. The whole system is built on confidence. However, with Donald Trump as president, this confidence is tumbling. Last week, credit agency Moody's downgraded the USA's AAA sovereign credit rating, warning about the rising levels of government debt and a widening budget deficit. This immediately caused government borrowing costs up, adding trillions more to the debt since investors now see U.S. government bonds as riskier assets. The impact of a U.S. debt default would be disastrous, not just in America, but all around the world. Global financial markets would immediately be thrown into chaos. Many banks will stop lending money, and businesses would stop investing without any financing. Government employees won't be paid, meaning millions of workers would struggle to make ends meet. Unfortunately, although many politicians claim to be fiscally responsible, they have no problem increasing the federal debt by even more trillions of dollars if it would mean they keep their seat in Congress. Within Trump's big, beautiful bill is another $150 billion for defense and another $70 billion for border security. In 2024, U.S. defense spending reached $1 trillion, making them the biggest spenders in the world. The USA alone accounted for almost 40% of global defense spending. In fact, the USA's defense spending is larger than the budgets for the next 9 countries combined. This ridiculous spending is increasingly being scrutinized. Americans are wondering whether all that defense budget is really benefiting them. That money could be spent much better, perhaps on schools, infrastructure, or even, dare I say, universal health care. If Trump really believes in his America First policy investing in American citizens, and cutting the national debt should be his top priorities. If the USA really does default on its debt, politicians like Trump will not be affected, but instead ordinary folks like you and me will shoulder the pain. Another problem with these tax cuts is the social effect on working-class Americans, especially those relying on Medicaid. As we all know, healthcare in the U.S. is not cheap. Just calling an ambulance can cost $1,200 for those without medical insurance. Medicaid is a government program created in the 1980s to provide healthcare services at a discounted rate to low-income families all across the country. Trump's big, beautiful bill, if passed, will introduce work requirements for Medicaid recipients, including a proposed 80-hour monthly work requirement for able-bodied adults, as well as increased Medicaid fees. It also contains new verification requirements and increases the frequency of eligibility checks for Medicaid recipients. Trump and his Republican allies are justifying these measures as a way to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. However, Democrats and even some rebel Republicans describe them as morally wrong and politically suicidal. Shockingly, other Republicans are doubling down, calling for much more spending cuts, even at the risk of harming their own constituents. Democrats have even proposed more than 500 amendments to the bill. The bill even plans to cut $300 million from the Federal Food Assistance Program, SNAP. This program allows low-income households to buy groceries with federal food stamps. More than 42 million Americans are currently benefiting from this scheme. These cuts will increase food insecurity, meaning widespread poverty and hunger. Cuts to Medicaid and SNAP means Americans making between about $17,000 to $51,000 would lose about $700 yearly. Those with an income of less than $17,000 would lose more than $1,000 on average. While working-class Americans suffer from these measures, well-to-do families are likely to benefit from these tax cuts as they do not rely on federal aid programs. This will cause greater inequality in America, leading to many social issues like crime and poverty. Much of Trump's voter base comes from blue-collar working-class Americans. These voters may feel angry and abandoned due to Trump's new bill and may punish him at the next elections. In the end, Trump's big, beautiful bill is less a vision for a stronger America and more a mirror reflecting the country's growing inequality, political dysfunction, and fiscal recklessness. It exposes the contradictions at the heart of modern American Republicans: tax cuts for the rich paired with service cuts for the poor, all while claiming the mantle of populism. As the U.S. edges closer to an economic cliff, it's not the politicians or the rich who will suffer, it's the workers, families, and communities who have been promised prosperity but delivered poverty. This isn't just a debate about taxes or spending, it's a defining test of what kind of society America wants to be. If this nation fails to rein in its debt without sacrificing its most vulnerable, it won't just be the credit rating that suffers, it will be the very soul of a 249-year-old republic and the entire world economy. For now, it seems no wall, no matter how big or beautiful, can shield America from the madness of Donald Trump. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you in the next video.